Thank you for tuning in. I'm Yixun Zhang, the Program Officer for Film and Audiovisual Programs at the Japan Foundation, Toronto. On Sunday, June 1st, we hosted a screening of the documentary MORIYAMA-SAN in conjunction with our ongoing exhibition, Built Environment, an Alternative Guide to Japan. After the screening, we gathered questions from the audience, and today I'm very excited to have this special Q&A with one of the filmmakers, Louise Lemoine. So the filmmakers, Bêka and Louise Lemoine, are a filmmaking duo internationally recognized for their distinctive body of work at the intersection of cinema, visual arts, and architecture. Over the past 2 decades, they have made more than 30 films that brought global attention to how architecture shapes everyday life. And I'm very excited to welcome you to the Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad we could screen the film MORIYAMA-SAN.
Thank you very much. And to begin, could you tell us a little bit about how you and Ila first know about or met MORIYAMA-san and what drew you to making a film about him?
Sure. Unfortunately, Ila couldn't come while he would have been even better to answer the question. But let's say that we met Nishizawa-san, the architect of the house, probably 10 years before we made this film. And when we met, it was in France when he was doing a lecture in France. He came to us interested already at the time. It was close to just after the completion of the house, and he saw our first film called As House Life. I think he enjoyed that film very much, which is very much focused on a quite irresistible character, the housekeeper of the house. And thinking of this film, he said, oh, maybe, we should think of a film in the Moriyama house, because Mr. Moriyama is quite a character as well. So already 10 years before, this was in the air. But, Japan is not so close from Europe. And so we had to think of the good moment and conditions to make this film happen. So it took actually 10 years to find the right constellation to make it work. But Ila was actually in Japan during a summer for another film project. And when they met with Nishizawa-san, Nishizawa took him to the house, as it is explained a bit in the film. And he met Mr. Moriyama. But this encounter, we make films with the idea of real spontaneity, catching the moment. We really are so cautious about keeping not artificializing situations. And Ila, when he met Mr. Moriyama on that summer day, and Mr. Moriyama suddenly, when they understood that they had in common a great passion for noise music, suddenly a sort of, friendship popped up like this. And Ila said, okay, maybe can I come back tomorrow and maybe spend a bit of time with you? And so the film wasn't planned at all to be shot on that moment, because he would have waited for me to come in a later moment. But he had a small camera with him and started filming like this without knowing that this would be the film. But then Mr. Moriyama invited him to stay one more day and one more day and one more day until a week. So actually the film developed this way, in a complete spontaneous and improvised way. And this explains also the tonality and the real freshness you can find in the film.
Thank you so much for sharing the story. And a lot of viewers were really curious about Moriyama-san and his background, because the film is selective in what aspects of his life it shows. For example, we don't see anything about his family members or his professional life, or see him doing everyday chores such as cooking or shopping. Could you speak about how you land these decisions?
On one side, I would say that Mr. Moriyama was a little bit, how would you say, not secretive, but a bit mysterious about his previous life. He didn't speak so much about it, where afterwards we understood that in the 70s he was quite active in the underground cultural culture of Tokyo, and maybe also participated in a few films, but this is still not fully sure. But Mr. Moriyama, it's very interesting because it's an example of an architectural project which also implied certain economical strategy, if I can say, in the sense that architecture can sometimes be thought in such an intelligent way that it can also provide a living model, in the sense that Mr. Moriyama, before, I think he was working with his mother, who passed away before we shot the film, and passing away, and she had a liquor shop, if I understood well, and probably Mr. Moriyama was working in this liquor shop. When inheriting the house of his mother, you probably know this better than me. In Japan, you have, in order to support people in building new houses with new earthquake regulations, if you destroy the house you inherit and you build a new house, you don't pay the taxes, inheritance taxes, so in order to make sure that the city constantly evolves following the new regulation for earthquake. So this is the start of the architectural project. That's a bit why Mr. Moriyama also chose to build a new house. And but the project Mr. Nishizawa proposed to Moriyama, because Moriyama was living alone with his dog, so he didn't need a full big house for himself. So with Nishizawa, they thought, okay, so why don't we build more, and like these little satellites, these little cubes that have certain autonomy, so that he could rent some of the cubes and live in some of the cubes. So it's a kind of closed system. He didn't need to work anymore, because Nishizawa also said, okay, I will also help you to find people to rent those places, because I have a lot of people working at my studio that would love to live here. So that's the architectural project also implied a big shift in the way Mr. Moriyama lived, because he could stop working and find this sort of circularity and self-sustain strategy.
Yeah, some of our viewers also commented on his sort of eccentric personality and was wondering if his character was gradually revealed during the filmmaking, or if there is a message in depicting Moriyama-san, whose eccentricity may not be representative of most Japanese people.
I think yeah, Mr. Moriyama is quite unique, and this is the reason why we chose to make a film about him, basically, because we thought it was absolutely amazing for many reasons, not only for his incredible culture. I mean, he's a bit of a self-made man. He is what we could call a real amateur, in the sense of loving not only architecture, but art and philosophy and cinema. And he has so many interests in all the artistic disciplines, and spend his day reading poetry, essays about French philosophy, or he's quite amazing. But he does it only, or if we understand it like this, only for the pleasure for himself, and not as a sort of social thing of showing his knowledge. And that's what what amazed us so much, is this sense of pleasure, which is at the very core of how he leads his life, moved by a very subtle search for moments of poetry, or moments of very subtle sensibility.
And you touched on this a little bit earlier. A lot of audiences find the film really beautifully captures a house as almost a character in itself. So how did the idea of Moriyama-san's house as a village in the forest come about?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain you before about this sort of thought of building more than he needed in order to find also a sort of self-sustained economy. And initially, the house was the family house. I think occupied most of the land, but thanks to removing the old house and building only small units, it could gain a lot of the in-between spaces, which became then the beautiful small garden, which is so interesting in the way you have a very close proximity between the cubes, but at the same times the vegetation helps to keep a certain intimacy between the various cubes. So yeah, I think from the start, the house was built as a collective project of a little. We call it a village. It's an exaggeration, but I mean a collection of little units. And I think he occupies himself four or five cubes, and then the other ones are rented.
And do you find that the structure of house in any way impacted on the structure of your story?
Yes, we from many years and many films, we appreciate and we have developed a form of storytelling to films which is very much about also fragmentation, because we give a lot of importance to the present tense, or not telling, biopics which talks about past and future, but we very much locate ourselves in the present moment of living an experience. And so that's why we build our films also in this idea of little instants or fragments, as we call them. So there are moments shared with someone in a very specific time and very specific place. And so the film is made out of this collection of pearls, or collection of very of intensities, we could call it.
Thank you. And some audiences also noted that the text on screen really helps the film flow really well. How long did the editing process take, and how did you decide on the text?
This is also something we've developed in many other films, this sort of parallel narration, which helps to, rather than using a voiceover, which would be probably more invasive and more, we like to suggest our presence as author and narrator, but in the background. And so to keep a certain distance and in a silent way. So you have let's say the narration at the present tense of the story you see on image, and then you have a sort of backstory, which is the one we tell as narrators, and with a certain distance, which is the one you gain while you edit, which is not at the very moment you film, but at the one then you edit. And the editing part, it can take months. I mean, it can take 6 months of editing, or it depends, from a film to another. Now I don't have very clear, I don't remember, but yeah, it takes a while.
Okay. We also had a question about the song 夜来香, sung by a guest at the party, and that scene wasn't subtitled. So people were curious, was that a deliberate choice? And could you share more about that moment?
The reason why sometimes we don't subtitle in our films is that we make the films from a position of a foreigner. And as a foreigner, while you assist to a scene or a situation you don't understand, you perceive it with its certain qualities, which is in this case musical qualities, and a sense of surprise and of beauty that you don't necessarily need any more explanation, or to describe it as it's not an information, but it's a moment of beauty. So we kept it this way.
My next question is also about a specific scene. That's where Moriyama-san plays with a dandelion seed. And the text on screen says, like a dandelion rising in the sky. I was just wondering if there were any deeper meaning to that. Would you like to expand on that scene?
That scene is pretty, let's say, representative of the entire film. As I was telling you before, we compose these films as a collection of instance of moments lived with this idea, you know, like almost like an haiku. It's these very short poetic forms, which just is a moment captured on screen. And Mr. Moriyama has this extremely delicate and subtle way of relating to being a flower or a dandelion or a book or a light or just the way to feel the moment in his house, that we just wanted to show that level of subtlety. So I think it just talks about this.
Okay. I think we have maybe time for one last question. I know in recent years, some writers compared your film to Perfect Days, although your film was made many years before that. I was just curious to see if there were any films or artworks that have inspired the making of this film.
You mean Perfect Days?
No, the making of Moriyama-san. Were there any influences?
Yeah, let's say that we don't. It's you know, we one every artist is fed by what he reads, what he sees, what he hears, what he listens to, etc. Something is, you know, making art your art practice with all these presents or references, etc. Another thing is more than being inspired, but is a bit of a copy, you know. So I think you're evoking Perfect Days, which is an example of how much somehow there is a bit too much taken of Moriyama-san in that film, without recognizing the source, which was a bit of a bit annoying for us. But Moriyama-san, you know, it's the first film we made in Japan, and after that film, we were so passionate about Japan that we found a way to live there for half a year in a French residency program, and made several other films in Japan afterwards. So it was also our first film to of discovery of the Japanese culture, and so we were really like just with the wide eyes open, and really, as I said initially, it was not a film that was scripted and written and very thought before. It was made with a pure sense of spontaneity and curiosity. So made like this at the moment it happened. So I wouldn't say there was a plan with very specific references from before. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and stories with us. It's a real pleasure to know more about the making of Moriyama-san and the thoughtful choices behind the film and all the spontaneous moments. So thank you so much for your answers.
I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy that the audience appreciated the film.
Yeah. So just to close up, I would like to thank anybody who's watching this. And if you enjoyed the conversation, please feel free to share. We hope the film has stayed with you as much as it has with us. And if you are interested in our built environment exhibition, it's on until July 15th at our gallery. Afterwards, it will travel to other cities in Canada. I think in 2026, it will also travel to Italy. So please check out the Japan Foundation's website for more information. Thank you.
Super.